even better.
And to that point, Jenna, since you're bringing it up, we're just getting this in here to MSNBC. A senior DHS official telling NBC News that professional public servants at Department of State and the Department of Homeland Security, that they had no input in the drafting of the documents that we are now seeing the effects of, those who are being detained. And they're scrambling at the moment to figure out how to interpret and implement those words that have come over from the White House related to the executive order. And I'll quote this one official saying, nobody has any idea what is going on. In your time reporting for the Washington Post, have you seen this before, and have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, scramble's exactly the word to describe this. President Trump signed this order late yesterday. More than 2 hours later, it was sent to reporters. And a lot of people are still trying to make sense of this. The first lawsuit came overnight. It's now Saturday.
Yeah.
Agencies are trying to make sense of this.
Jenna,
lawyers are trying to make sense of it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Stand by. As I was saying earlier, we now see Democratic Representative Gerald Nadler speaking, perhaps with more information on those who've been detained. Let's take a listen.
Subcommittee. We're joined today by Congresswoman Nydia Velazquez, a colleague of mine, and Assemblyman Francisco Moya. I want to make two major points. First, the executive order signed by President Trump is discriminatory on religion, and frankly quite disgusting. It is also counterproductive. The expressed intent is to protect the United States against terrorists. But the fact of the matter is, not a single terrorist incident since before 9/11 has been caused by anyone from any of the 7 countries that the president named. By contrast, a country like Saudi Arabia, which produced most of the attackers on September 11th, is not covered by this order. Secondly, the refugees who have valid visas, the president said he wants extreme vetting. We've been doing extreme vetting. For years, we've been doing vetting. All these refugees have been examined and their bona fides looked into and their records looked into for an average of 2 years. 2 years by American authorities. The person who was held and was released this morning, finally released this morning, who was detained overnight, Hamid Darwish, was a marked man in Iraq because he served as an interpreter and worked with American troops. He helped the U.S. Army for years. He is not a potential terrorist. So it is counterproductive, it is ridiculous, and it discriminates on the basis of religion because Christians from these countries are allowed in. Only Muslims from these countries are not, and that goes against every ounce of our tradition from George Washington onward. And it doesn't help protect the United States. Second point is that the application of this is, dealing with the people we have here today, is particularly ridiculous. Even if you said that you wanted to keep people from certain countries out of the United States, once you have vetted certain people, once the American people have, the American staff people, the State Department people, the military people, have looked at a given individual and said, this person is no threat. They've looked at him for 2 years, and they've given him a valid visa. And then, while in the air, this executive order comes out, he should be permitted to enter the country. People would not be permitted, obviously, to get on a plane. They wouldn't get any more visas. But people who are in the air when this comes out should not suddenly be taken into custody in this country. That makes no sense at all. Because after all, the timing of the order, whether it's 1 day earlier or 1 day later, is entirely based on happenstance. And people have been coming into this country from these countries, and one more day for people who got valid visas who are in the air would make no difference at all. So a wooden application makes no sense, and an unconstitutional and disgusting application on the basis of religious discrimination violates every tradition of this country, and we're here to say this should stop and this should be revoked. Nydia?
Thank you. I'm Congresswoman Nydia Velazquez. I represent the 7th Congressional District, a district that has a lot of working families, a lot of immigrant families. Mr. President, look at us. This is America. What you have done is shameful. It's un-American, and it's created so much confusion, not only among working families and families in America, but also it's creating confusion with the people that are working in Homeland Security. This executive order is arbitrary. It doesn't provide real guidelines, and it's unjust. Here we have refugees who were granted legal visas to enter this country, and yet they had been detained illegally. That is the argument that both Congressman Jerry Nadler and I, as well as IRA, the International Refugees Assistance Project, is making. I am begging you to go and revisit this. It's ill-advised, it's mean-spirited, it's tearing families apart, and that is not who we are. It will undermine the cooperation and collaboration that we need from Muslim countries to fight terrorism. It is wrong, and we will fight it today and every single day.
What about the other 11?
Hundreds and hundreds of refugees who are currently stranded, trying to enter this country. We have been contacted today by dozens and dozens of refugees, of people whose lives are in danger because they worked as interpreters for the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan, of husbands trying to reunite with wives who were given visas to the United States after extensive vetting, put on a plane and promised refuge, and then landed and put in handcuffs. The gentleman that was detained overnight spent years of his life in Iraq serving the interests of the U.S. When he got to the country last night on a special immigrant visa, he was interrogated for hours. He was handcuffed. He was separated from his wife and child. He was ultimately released because of the attention that this is generating. But dozens and dozens of people remain in airport detention throughout the country simply because they were unlucky enough to have gotten on a plane on the day that President Trump signed the executive order. In addition to the hundreds of thousands of people that this executive order will sentence to death in the future, to the damage that it will do to U.S. credibility, especially with our Middle East allies who we desperately need in the fight against ISIS. There are hundreds of people who are going to be put in jail today because the Department of Homeland Security is choosing to interpret the policy to allow them to detain people who are attempting to lawfully enter this country after years and years of vetting, and we cannot stand by while that happens.
What can you tell us about?
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes, what can you tell us about the 11 people that are still being detained?
We know that one of the other people being detained is an Iraqi refugee. His wife was persecuted because of her work for the U.S. government. They were separated several years ago. She was resettled to Houston. She has a green card now. She's desperate to reach him. He landed last night, and they wouldn't let him move on from JFK. He's still being held. We've heard that there are additional 9 people. We can't confirm any of their names, and without their names, we can't do anything for them. So we're also asking for Customs and Border Patrol and the Department of Homeland Security to please release the names of people that they are holding so that they're not in a black hole where no legal help can reach them. Once you land in the U.S., once you set foot in a U.S. airport, you have legal rights. And if they won't even name the people that they're holding, there's no way that those people can access the rights guaranteed to them by the Constitution.
Okay, we are hearing some descriptions there of the 2 that were detained at JFK. about what they have done for the United States of America. One, an interpreter, his wife and his child here in the United States. That interpreter, Darwish, has been doing it for about the last 10 years, or actually from 2003 to 2013. Hamid Khalid Darwish, not only interpreter but also an engineer and contractor for the U.S. government in Iraq, assisting our forces there in that country. Also listening to two representatives from Congress, Gerald Nadler and Nydia Velazquez. Robert Traynham, when we hear these stories of these detainees, individuals that have risked their lives to serve the United States and the U.S. military, and then as they try to make their way as refugees to the United States because they are no longer safe or welcome in the country that they were assisting, if you will, a foreign military force. This is fairly inconsistent with the thematic that may come from the Republicans saying, we are for the military, we do support strong international and foreign affairs policies. These don't come together necessarily.
No, not at all. In fact, it goes back to my earlier point about this country is going to have to look itself in the mirror and ask itself, what do we believe and what do we stand for? And are we going to continue to allow refugees into this country who have been persecuted? What I think has just happened is that the administration has walked up to the beehive and has hit the beehive. And now all of a sudden you see all of these bees swarming here, and then we just may get stung here.